The city's relentless hum filtered through the window of our modest San Francisco apartment as I stood there, hands still damp from the evening's dishes. I'm Ethan Davis, and for years, I've worn the badge of head custodian at one of the city's most prestigious tech me's with pride. It's not a job that comes with accolades or admiration, but it's honest work, the kind that keeps the lights on and food on the table. It's given me a quiet dignity, a sense of purpose that I've held onto tightly. My wife, Victoria, walked in from her shift at the boutique, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. Her face was tight, like she'd been holding something in all day. I could sense the tension radiating off her, but I didn't push. I never did. She dropped her purse on the counter, avoiding my gaze, and after a long, heavy pause, she finally spoke. "Ethan, I need you to stay away from my sister's wedding," she said, her voice steady but cold. I frowned, drying my hands on a dish towel, confusion swirling in my mind. "Why Victoria? What's going on?" I asked, searching her face for any hint of what was happening. She sighed, her expression hardening. "I can't have people knowing you're just a custodian, Ethan." "It's embarrassing," she said, her words slicing through me like a knife. "Just a custodian." I stood there, stunned, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I'd never been ashamed of my job, never saw a reason to be, but the way she said it made it sound like a dirty secret. Before I could respond, she continued, her voice sharper. "I'll tell them you're dead. It's better this way. Never contact me again." I froze, her words echoing in my mind. Dead. She wanted to erase me from her life, to bury me like I was nothing. I looked into her eyes, those hazel eyes I'd fallen in love with years ago, and saw only resolve. No regret, no softness, just a woman who had already made up her mind. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just stood there, the silence stretching between us, heavy and suffocating. Years of marriage, of shared laughter and tears, reduced to this moment. All because I wasn't good enough for her sister's high society wedding. I don't remember deciding to leave, but suddenly I was in our bedroom, pulling my old duffel bag from the closet. I started packing work boots, flannel shirts, socks with holes, each item feeling heavier than it should, like I was packing up more than just clothes. I was packing up pieces of myself, pieces she no longer wanted. Victoria didn't stop me. She didn't say a word. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and glanced at her one last time. She was staring out the window, arms crossed, like I was already gone. Maybe I was. I stepped out into the cool night air, the door clicking shut behind me, and felt the weight of it all crash down. A broken man, that's what I was. Not because I'd lost her, but because I'd lost something I didn't even know I'd been holding on to, my dignity. The streetlights flickered as I walked, no real plan, just moving. My phone stayed silent in my pocket, no calls, no texts, nothing. She meant it. I was dead to her, and as I trudged toward the cheap motel a few blocks away, the ache in my chest grew, mixing with a quiet anger I wasn't ready to face. How had it come to this? How had the woman I loved turned me into a ghost? I didn't have answers, not yet. All I had was my bag, my pride, and a job that apparently wasn't worth a damn to the one person who mattered most. I woke up in that cramped motel room, the thin mattress creaking under me, the faint smell of bleach and old cigarette smoke hanging in the air. My name's Ethan Davis, and after Victoria kicked me out, told me I was dead to her, I didn't have much left but my job. Head custodian at one of San Francisco's slickest tech companies. It wasn't much to some people, but it was mine. I'd spent years making sure every floor gleamed, every trash can was emptied, every window spotless for the corporate types who barely noticed me. After that night, with my marriage in pieces, I didn't know what else to do but throw myself into it. Work was the one thing I could control, the one place where I still felt like I mattered. My crew, Omar, Tony, and Elena, noticed I wasn't myself. I'd always been the guy cracking jokes, keeping things light while we scrubbed and swept, but now I was quiet, my head down, my hands moving faster than my mouth. Omar raised an eyebrow one morning, mopping beside me, but he didn't ask. Tony gave me a nod like he knew something was up, but figured I'd talk when I was ready. Elena, though, she watched me a little closer, her dark eyes soft with worry. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? My wife was ashamed of me, wanted me gone. I kept it locked inside, let the rhythm of the work drown it out. The building was my kingdom, minus 30 floors of glass and steel, and I knew every inch. That morning, I was up on the 30th, checking the supply closet, making sure we had enough paper towels and cleaner for the day. The sun was just breaking over the skyline, casting long shadows across the polished floors, when I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, deliberate. I turned, and there he was, Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Technologies, the guy who owned half the damn city. I'd seen him before, striding through the lobby in his tailored suits, but we'd never spoken. He was tall, gray hair slicked back, sharp like he could see right through you. "You must be the head of cleaning here," he said, glancing at my uniform, the name tag stitched with Ethan and faded thread. His voice was deep, steady, not a hint of judgment. I straightened up, wiping my hands on my pants, feeling a little exposed. "Yes, sir," I said. "That's me. I just do my job." He nodded like he was sizing me up, then surprised me with a small smile. "Honest work is the foundation of any great business," he said. "My father started as a janitor before he built this empire. Never forgot where he came from." I blinked, caught off guard. A janitor? This guy's dad, Alexander Sterling, was a legend, billions in tech, a name that meant power, and here he was, talking about mops and brooms like they mattered. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded again, my throat tight. "I've heard good things about you," he went on, adjusting his cufflinks. "Keep it up." Then he walked off, his polished shoes clicking against the floor I'd buffed the night before, leaving me standing there, stunned. I turned back to the supply closet, my hand shaking a little as I grabbed a stack of towels. Honest work, foundation. The word stuck with me, rolling around in my head all day. Victoria had never seen it that way. My job was a stain to her, something to hide. But this man, this titan, looked at me like I was part of something bigger. It didn't fix the hole she left, didn't erase the sting of her telling me I wasn't good enough, but it lit something small inside me, a flicker of validation I hadn't felt in years. I spent the rest of the shift moving faster, checking every detail twice. Omar caught me wiping down a railing that was already clean and laughed. "You trying to impress someone, boss?" he teased. I smirked, shrugging it off, but inside, I was holding on to Sterling's words like a lifeline. My marriage was shattered, sure, but I still had this: my hands, my work, my pride. The elites upstairs might not know my name, but the building did. Every shining floor, every streak-free window, it was mine. And for the first time since Victoria turned her back on me, I felt like maybe that was enough. Not forever, maybe, but for now. The motel room became my sanctuary, a place where I could lick my wounds and try to make sense of the wreckage that was now my life. The thin mattress and faded wallpaper were a far cry from the home I'd shared with Victoria, but it was quiet, and that's what I needed. The city outside hummed with life, a stark contrast to the emptiness I felt inside. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the familiar routines and the satisfaction of a job well done. Every morning I'd wake up before dawn, the first light of day creeping through the grimy window. I'd splash cold water on my face, the shock of it jolting me awake, and head to the tech tower that had become my second home. The building was always alive, even in the early hours, with the distant hum of servers and the occasional echo of footsteps. I'd start on the top floor, working my way down, ensuring every surface gleamed and every piece of trash was gone. My crew noticed the change in me. Omar would give me a sideways glance as we worked together, his usual jokes replaced with a respectful silence. Tony would nod in my direction, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken pain I carried. Elena, always perceptive, would watch me with concern in her eyes, but she never pried. They knew something was wrong, but they also knew I'd talk when I was ready. One morning, as I was restocking the supply closet on the 30th floor, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Alexander Sterling, the CEO, standing there. His presence was commanding, yet there was a warmth in his eyes that put me at ease. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt seen in a way I hadn't in a long time. "Ethan, right?" he said, extending a hand. I nodded, wiping my hands on my pants before shaking his. "I've heard great things about your work ethic," he continued. "It's not easy to find people who take pride in what they do, no matter the job." I was taken aback. Here was one of the most powerful men in the city, taking the time to acknowledge me, a custodian. "Thank you, sir," I managed to say. "I just do my job the best I can." He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "That's all any of us can do, Ethan. And it's more than enough." He paused, looking around the gleaming floor. "You know, my father started out as a janitor. He used to tell me that the measure of a man isn't in his job title, but in how he does his job, no matter how big or small." His words resonated with me, filling a void that Victoria's rejection had left behind. I stood a little taller, my shoulders a little straighter. Maybe I wasn't just a custodian. Maybe I was more than that. But the reminder of Victoria was never far away. One day, as I was returning to the motel, I found a thick envelope waiting for me. My heart sank as I recognized her handwriting. I knew what it was before I even opened it: divorce papers. The finality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. I signed the papers, my hand shaking, and sent them back. It was over. The nights were the hardest. The motel room was quiet, too quiet, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the memories of our life together. The laughter, the tears, the quiet moments in between, it all seemed like a distant dream now. I'd wonder where it all went wrong, how we ended up here, but the answers never came. One Saturday, as I sat in the motel room, the TV flickering with some mindless show, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Victoria's name. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to hear her voice, not ready to face the pain. But then it rang again and again. Each call was a different number: her mother, her sister, cousins I'd barely remembered. Something was wrong. I answered the next call, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is it?" I asked, my voice rough with emotion. Victoria's voice came through, shaky and desperate. "Ethan, please," she begged. "I need you. Everything's falling apart." I almost laughed at the irony. She needed me now, after she'd thrown me away like trash. But there was something in her voice, a raw desperation that tugged at me. "What's going on, Victoria?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She was crying now, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It's the wedding. Everything's a mess. I can't do this without you." I sat there, stunned. The wedding she didn't want me to attend, the wedding where she'd planned to pretend I was dead, that was what she needed me for. The anger bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. But there was something else too, a quiet satisfaction at the thought of her needing me, of her world crumbling without me in it. I didn't say anything for a moment, letting her pleas hang in the air. Then, I made my decision. "I'll be there," I said, my voice cold. "But not for you, Victoria, for me." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I had to face it. I had to see the wreckage of the life she'd chosen over me. I had to see it for myself. I stepped out of the motel room, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I hailed a cab, my heart pounding in my chest as I gave the driver the address. The Fairmont Hotel loomed ahead, a symbol of the life I'd never fit into, the life Victoria had chosen over me. I stepped out of the cab, my hands clenched at my sides, ready to face whatever awaited me inside. As I walked through the grand entrance, heads turned, eyes locked onto me. I could feel the whispers ripple through the crowd, the shock at my presence. I kept my head high, my steps steady, as I made my way towards Victoria. She rushed towards me, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her face a mess of tears and smeared mascara. "Ethan, thank God you're here," she said, grabbing my arm. I pulled back slightly, her touch burning like a brand. "What's going on, Victoria?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. She looked around nervously, then leaned in close. "They know," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. I raised an eyebrow, stepping back. "Know what, Victoria?" I asked, my voice cold. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "Everything," she choked out, her voice breaking. I stood there, staring at her, trying to piece it all together. Everything. The lies, the deception, the fake death, it was all unraveling. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel buzzed with tension as I stood there, the unwanted guest who had crashed the party. All eyes were on me, a mix of shock and curiosity painted on the faces of the elegantly dressed attendees. At the front of the room, Alexander Sterling, his son Grayson, and Melanie, Victoria's sister, awaited my explanation. "You're the man I was told had been dead for 10 years, Alexander Sterling said, his voice steady and commanding. I took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "Yes, sir, I'm very much alive," I replied. The room went silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My ex-wife, Victoria, decided I didn't fit her story. She was ashamed of me, of my job. She told everyone I died in a car accident 10 years ago, signed the divorce papers, and told me never to contact her again. The crowd murmured in shock. Grayson stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "You knew about this?" he asked Melanie, his voice cutting. Melanie's hands twisted in her dress, tears welling up. "Grayson, I swear, I didn't know the details. I just knew she said he was gone." Grayson's voice was cold. "Your family's been lying to me, Melanie. I refuse to marry into deception." With that, he turned and walked away, the crowd parting in stunned silence. Victoria grabbed my arm, desperate. "Ethan, please, I'm sorry, forgive me." I pulled away, my voice firm. "This isn't about forgiveness, Victoria. You made your choice. Live with it." Alexander Sterling stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "That took guts, coming here, saying what you did," he said. "I admire men who work hard and take pride in what they do. You're wasted as just a cleaner. I want you to come work for me. head of facilities management for Sterling Holdings. Better pay, more responsibility, you've earned it. I was stunned. You're serious? I asked, my voice rough with emotion. He nodded. Dead serious. Think about it. Let me know Monday. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving Victoria and the shattered wedding behind. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a sense of freedom and purpose. Victoria's reckoning wasn't mine to carry. I had a chance to be more than she'd ever let me be, and I was ready to seize it. The skyline glittered ahead, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the ground solid under me. I was Ethan Davis, and I was more than just a custodian. I was a man ready to take on the world with a newfound sense of pride and determination. The city sprawled out before me as I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, the cool San Francisco breeze brushing my face. The view of the bay, shimmering under the morning sun, was a stark contrast to the cramped motel room I'd left behind. I took a sip of coffee, the warmth grounding me as I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The aroma filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of the sea, as I let my mind wander over the events of the past months. I'd come a long way from the broken man who had walked out of Victoria's life. The divorce, the lies, the shattered wedding, it all seemed like a distant memory now. I was no longer just a custodian. I was the head of facilities management for Sterling Holdings. The job kept me busy, challenged me, and gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't known I was missing. I woke up every morning with a sense of anticipation, eager to tackle the day's challenges and make a difference in the bustling tech company. My new role came with responsibilities that stretched beyond mopping floors and emptying trash cans. I managed a team, ensured the smooth operation of the building, and even had an office with a window that overlooked the city. Omar, Tony, and Elena, my former colleagues, now looked to me for guidance. They'd tease me about my new collared shirts and clipboard, but there was a respect in their eyes that hadn't been there before. I'd earned it, and it felt good. I'd walk the floors, checking in with my crew, making sure everything was running smoothly, and feeling a sense of pride in the work we did together. Victoria had tried to reach out, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. She'd shown up at my door, a shadow of the woman I'd known, her pride stripped away. She'd talked about regrets, about missing me, about wanting to start over. But I didn't need her apologies or her regrets. I'd moved on, found my own worth, and built a life that didn't revolve around her validation. I'd closed that door, gently but firmly, and hadn't looked back. Alexander Sterling had kept his word, giving me a chance to prove myself. I'd taken that chance and run with it, determined to make the most of the opportunity. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. The city below hummed with life, and I felt a part of it, no longer an outsider looking in. I'd attend meetings, make decisions, and see the impact of my work reflected in the smooth operation of the building. I'd found a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose that filled the void Victoria had left behind. I set the mug down on the small table beside me, the steam curling up into the morning air. I stretched my legs out, feeling a sense of contentment wash over me. I'd heard whispers about Victoria, how her life had unraveled after the wedding fiasco. Her job at the boutique was gone, her family ties strained, and the fancy dinners and big houses seemed like distant memories. But I didn't dwell on it. Her choices had led her here, and I had my own path to follow. I had my own life to live, my own dreams to chase. I thought about the man I'd become, stronger, more resilient. I'd lost a wife, a life I thought I wanted, but I'd gained so much more. I'd found my self-respect, my dignity, and a sense of purpose that filled the void Victoria had left behind. I was no longer the guy she'd thrown away. I was Ethan Davis, a man who stood tall and proud, ready to face whatever challenges came my way. As I looked out at the city, the sun casting a warm glow over the skyline, I felt a sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but I was ready for it. I had a job I loved, a team that respected me, and a newfound confidence that made me feel invincible. I was starting over, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. I stood up, leaning on the railing, and took a deep breath. The city below was alive, and so was I. I was Ethan Davis, and I was more than just a custodian. I was a man reborn from the ashes of a broken marriage, ready to take on the world with a newfound sense of purpose and pride. The future was open, full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace whatever came my way. The phone buzzed inside, probably Omar texting about some supply mix-up, and I smiled. I'd deal with it, same as always, but for now I stayed out here, the breeze on my skin, the coffee in my hand, the skyline ahead. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. And as I looked out at the city, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them head on, with courage, determination, and a newfound sense of self.